Today's DIY project takes a classic item and just adds a little twist to it. You can find glory in making your own large tote bag with a foam pocket. Tote bags are probably one of the easier projects to start with, so if you're watching this video, you're considering sewing maybe for the first time, I highly recommend trying to make a tote bag first. Or if you're experienced, then try this tote bag design, because this is the tote bag that we're going to be making, and you can see here it has this slit pocket. It's a bit tricky to sew this pocket, so if you're new to sewing, maybe skip this part, but if you're looking for a challenge, then maybe give it a try. This one's been through some rough times. I've had this one for a few years now. Today we're gonna make it on this clean cream canvas. This is one of my designs that I did from the very beginning, and I liked it so much, so I wanted to share it with you all. So if you want to sew along with me, there's a link for the pattern. It's got everything you need from the tote bag size, for sizing for each panel of the pockets, and the strap placement. Or there's a link below with the DIY kit. It's gonna have just enough canvas for this bag, woven straps, and it's gonna have the big paper pattern. And that be all. So let's get started. So the first step, like always, grab your non-fabric scissors. I always like to cut the top corner first because it has info on what the pattern is and some of the fabric details. And once I cut that out, I put it to the side and cut the rest of the pattern. Once all of our patterns cut out, we're gonna put the pockets to the side. We're gonna start with the big main panel. So grab your fabric and fold it so that you can place this on top. Once you have the pattern piece placed down and set, remember to place this edge on the fold where it says. We're gonna grab some clips and we'll just clip it in. You can also use pins if you like. Sometimes I'll pin the top of the pattern because it's so big, but I'm more of a clip guy. Pins poke me a little bit. At the top, you'll see the strap placement. Get your scissors, cut a little notch there. You can also get chalk to mark the notches a little bit so they're easier to find later. If you decided to do the pocket, then take your seam ripper or a pen and mark each corner of the pocket placement. As I'm saying this, I'm going to write in instructions on an updated version of the pattern, so the instructions are on the pattern as well as in this video. And just like before, I'm going to grab some chalk and I'm just going to mark the corners that I just poked. Just makes it easier to find for later, and with materials like this, it's easy to lose those markers. And at the bottom of each side, there's a spot to notch, which we'll return to later. And now grab your fabric scissors and cut it all out. With panel A, fold it in half, and we're gonna iron this down. Next, grab panel B, and we're gonna put panel A folded against panel B, and we're gonna line it up to the top edge. And we're gonna sew this piece down. I'm gonna change my sewing settings to tension of 8, length 3, 3.5, and I'm gonna use this Gudeman thread that matches the cream canvas. We're gonna sew panel A to panel B from end to end. Don't forget to reverse stitch at the beginning and the end. Now grab your ruler, find that pocket placement, which if you marked it with chalk is easy to find, and we're gonna connect the line from the bottom markers that extends past the markers. That way, when we pull panel A and B on top, we'll be able to see where the line is and be able to match that line with the stitch that we just did. Once that's lined up, grab yourself a pin and hold that panel in place. Now we have to sew the panels down to the bag, but we're not going to sew it end to end. We're only going to sew it from where the top placement markers are. I'm going to draw these lines to show you guys where to start and end the stitch, and you can see how it's in line with the top placement markers. Panel C's been sitting on the sideline for a while, so let's pull that one in. Place it on top of panel B and make sure it's lined up. Now we're basically going to sew this panel down the same way we did for panel A and B, where we don't do edge to edge. So grab a piece of chalk and just extend the same lines that we drew initially, and this is where you're going to start and end the stitch. To determine how high to start the stitch, we're going to flip panel B over, and because it's stitched in, we're going to do the same height as the height of this folded piece of panel A. So when I take my ruler, it's 7/8 of an inch. So I'm gonna measure 7/8 of an inch from panel B's stitch line. Or if you want to play it safe, add an 1/8 of an inch or maybe a 1/4 of an inch as buffer. So maybe do an inch or an inch and 1/8. And you'll see why later when we get to that point. But right now, mark that line. So we have our sewing guideline. So let's start stitching. Let's start stitching. Now we're gonna flip the panel over. And you can see where the stitching is for the pockets. We're gonna cut a line so that we can feed the pocket panels through. Hold up. This isn't gonna be a straight cut. We're gonna bring the 2 markers in like a V and then connect them with a straight line in the middle. Then grab your seam ripper to start the cut and then squeeze your scissors through, but be very, very careful not to cut more than just the top layer. We don't want to be cutting the pocket panels that we just stitched on the other side. Then flip it over and push all the panel pieces through to the other side. Now we got the start of our pocket. It's coming together. Straighten out the sides so that it's as clean as possible. We're gonna do a stitch line at the bottom, but pull panel C out. We're trying to sew just panel A and B onto the bag. I wanna get a 1/4 inch stitch, so I'm gonna do my little trick where I pull the needle over to the side and I match the edge of the sewing foot with the edge of where I want sewed, and that's how I'm gonna get my 1/4 inch stitch. Now pull panel C back down. I know we've been flipping that piece back and forth, but flip it down so that we can sew this pocket in shut. We're gonna sew from the left side across and down. I'm gonna do another 1/4 inch stitch, so I'm gonna move it to the other side. I'm gonna line up the left side of my presser foot to the edge of where I want sewed, and that on my machine gives me a 1/4 inch stitch. Now once you pull up to the corner, you're gonna do a turn, but you're not gonna start a new stitch. You're gonna leave the needle down, lift the presser foot up, and then turn the fabric. So the needle holds down your last stitch, pull the press foot back down, and then continue your stitch. You're gonna keep doing that across, and then do the same thing when you get to the other corner, where you have the needle position down, the presser foot up, then you turn the fabric, and then put the press foot back down and continue sewing. This is where you can see a bit of a close-up how hard it is to get a really clean corner on these pockets. I was kind of rushing this, but I'm not gonna hide it from y'all. Just a heads up, this is the challenging part of this pocket. It's just getting that clean corner. Now flip the bag over. I know there's a lot of flipping flopping. And we're gonna close this pocket off by just sewing the edges, connecting panel B and panel C, so that when you put stuff in your pocket, that nothing falls out, that it's being held in by these stitches. And if there's any excess, maybe from panel C, you can cut off that excess after doing the stitch. I just left a little bit of room there in case, just in case we all make mistakes. Don't forget to reverse that bad boy at the beginning and the end. Now before we get to the next step, I just want to say thanks to everyone who's subscribed so far. I hope you guys are enjoying my channel and these new tutorials. And if you're new to the channel, would appreciate a sub. I plan to do a lot more DIYs, tutorials, and sewing projects. So subscribe so you can follow along too. Now with our pocket done, we're gonna lay this down flat, and we're gonna take our ruler and chalk, and from the top edge, we're gonna measure 1/2 inch down, and then we're gonna measure from the top edge 1.5 inches. And we're gonna do that on both the top and the bottom. Now with our chalk marks on the right side of the bag, we're gonna flip this bag together like a quesadilla, and we're gonna clip it in. Clips over pins. We're gonna sew the left and the right side of the bag together, and it's gonna be a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So reverse stitch at the beginning, go all the way through, reverse stitch at the end, and repeat on the other side. Now we're gonna create this rectangular shape for the bag. So we're gonna fold it on the corner, and we're gonna get our handy dandy chalk. We're gonna mark 1.75 inches up the stitch. This is where we did that notch at the very beginning. And then we're gonna line up our ruler at that marker to draw a line from edge to edge. The stitch line should be right in the middle. I'm doing a 3-inch line, but here's where you can add some customization. You can make the base of the bag longer, you can make it shorter. It's up to you. Just make sure that when you draw that line, that the stitch line is at the middle of that measurement. That way you know it's an even fold. So now that we have the foundation of the bag sewed together, we're gonna find those notches that we made for the strap placements, and we're just gonna draw a guideline down. If you want, you can grab your pattern paper back out and line it up with the edges of the tote bag and draw the lines based off the pattern as well. These lines are about 4 inches, and it's on the inside of the bag. Once you're done that, turn the bag inside out. and we're gonna iron down the 1/2 inch line and the 1.5 inch line that we drew. So it's gonna go inwards like that, and then inwards again. If you're dealing with some thick canvas, then you're probably gonna need to turn the iron up pretty hot. But otherwise, here's a 1/2 inch line that I'm gonna iron down. And then once I'm done that all the way around, I'm gonna do the 1.5 inch line, the exact same thing, fold it in again. This is just gonna hide the raw edge of the tote bag so that it's a lot cleaner on the inside. Now we're gonna add the straps to the bag. For my bag, I like to have the straps at 28 inches. This accounts for the seam allowance, and the bag hangs at the right height that I like. It's big enough if I have a puffy coat, which I do have a puffy coat, that it's not a problem when I'm wearing it. But customize this to the length that you like. It's your bag. If you're running up to DIY kits, I'll give you enough straps that you can add a little bit more if you want to do it a little bit larger than the 28 inches that I recommend. Once you decided on the length of your straps, you're going to slide them into the bag right in line with the markers, and we're going to sew a line along the inside rim of the bag to hold the straps in place. Now that we have these stitches to hold the straps in place, we're going to fold the inside rim back in, and we're going to pull the straps out and sew those down. I'm going to do a square around the straps. This part can be tricky because with the canvas and the straps, it can get very thick, and under your press-a-foot it might have some issues. So if it's too thick, use your hands to guide the fabric through. Just be gentle with it. A little friendly reminder, only adjust and move the bag around when the needle position is down. That's when you're free to lift the press-a-foot up, pull the fabric, and then put it back down and sew. When the straps are secured, now we're on the final stitch where we just sew the inside rim down. I'm going to do the usual trick. I'm going to pull the needle position to the left, the needle falls to the left, and then I'm going to match up the left side of my press-a-foot to the left edge of the inside rim, and I'm going to stitch all the way around. This last stitch is like one of the best feelings when you know it's the last thing you have to do, and so you take your time with it, you make sure it's perfect. Watch those straps, they're gonna make your press-a-foot jump up. Take your time, because this is it. And there we have it, your very own tote bag with a convenient phone for a convenient pocket for your phone. For some of the chalk marks still in the bag, I would get a mixture of water and laundry detergent, and I'd get a brush, maybe a toothbrush, mix it in, and just brush off the chalk marks and let it dry, and it should be okay. This specific canvas was very thick. This woven strap was also really thick. When I got to this part, there's 2 layers of both. That was like the peak thickness that my machine was able to handle. Before I post this video, I'm gonna find the perfect canvas thickness and strap thickness that'll make it easy for everyone to sew. Whether you have a heavy duty machine or something on the lighter end, I'll find the perfect combination of fabrics for all types of machines. Check out my playlist of tutorials for other fun DIY projects, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace. I always like to cut the top corner first.